Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our last episode of MSP-TV and also the last day of the MSP this year. Thank you for joining us. So, a few things have happened the last few days since Wednesday. The countries came together in the Trusteeship Council to give their statements along with affected communities. We also heard from a lot of civil society organizations such as ICAN, the International Red Cross, Greenpeace, and many more. Then they moved on to the general debate before closing off with a review of what has happened since last year's MSP for the TPNW. And then we also, of course, had the great side events that are always happening, such as Artists Against the Bomb with Mexican artist Pedro Reyes and with the band's Ben and Jerry's. And then there was also a screening of the film Yara, Radioactive Patriarchy, where they highlight the suffering of the Kazakh women at the hands of nuclear testings. And besides that, we also had some experts in the building because there was a panel on gender and nuclear weapons where Ivana Hughes took word, and we also learned about the effects of nuclear war on children. And also today, we actually have the pleasure of sharing the building with many organizations that are coming here for the upcoming International Day of the Women. But before we move on, we will start with our first interview block, which with Martinus from the South Africa Permanent Representation. Let's move on to that. Good morning, everyone. We are here with Martinus Schalkwijk from South Africa. Martinus, thank you so much for agreeing to this interview.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And to start with the first question. So today is the last day of the MSP. So what are some points you would like to see in the final declaration?
Thank you very much, and thanks for the question. So what we would like to see is that the declaration would be aspirational, but also focus on outlining very clearly the difficulties that we experience and see in the world today, the whole issue of nuclear deterrence that's finding more and more acceptance, as well as countries that are agreeing to falling under the nuclear umbrella, that we highlight that we also speak about the consequences and the catastrophic consequences of nuclear detonations, the notion that this can't be mitigated, the effects that it will have on all countries in the world, and it will affect all of us. It cannot be contained within national borders. So a focus on that. And also we would like to see the declaration speak clearly about the nature of the treaty, the implementation thereof, and then the way moving forward. So we think that from the drafts we have seen, it's a good declaration. We are, as I believe, close to agreement on it, and I think it'll be a declaration that also moves us forward and moves the treaty forward in a positive way, and I also highlight its contribution to peace and security internationally.
Okay, thank you very much. So I would also like to congratulate you on South Africa's nomination for presidency next year. But besides that, South Africa has always been a global leader for disarmament. Could you tell us why it's such a crucial matter for you guys?
Thank you very much. I think it's all centered on the fact that South Africa is the only country in the world that developed its own nuclear weapons and then voluntarily dismantled them. So that whole program was dismantled, and it's proven that this is possible. It's possible to disarm. So from that perspective, it's important for us to also highlight that nuclear weapons is not a solution to peace and security. It's a threat to peace and security. And also we work from the point of view, as I've mentioned, from the humanitarian imperative that the catastrophic consequences of nuclear weapons cannot be mitigated, and therefore a world without nuclear weapons is what we need for sustainable social and economic development. So from that perspective, South Africa is a very strong believer and proponent of a world without nuclear, free from nuclear weapons. And I think our responsibility and role in that sense takes it forward in terms of the fourth MSP, and the review conference. And we believe our role to be one to help sustain and take forward and build on the very good work that has been done so far by the previous chairs.
Thank you. And so what then does South Africa hope to achieve in this presidency position for the review conference next year?
From our perspective, the good work has already been done, but we need to continue that work and build on the existing work. So in terms of the Vienna Declaration and Program of Work, we need to reassess that, see where there are gaps and to improve on that, and also to strengthen some of these work streams and working groups that we need to do. We need to also situate the treaty more firmly within the broader disarmament architecture. And by doing that, we will look at, for instance, the strengthening of the working groups on, for instance, gender, nuclear disarmament verification, international assistance, also the positive obligations in terms of victim assistance, and to basically also speak to the situation where the possession of nuclear weapons is against the UN Charter, and in that sense that we place the treaty at the center of the disarmament debate, and strengthen it further and give it sustenance so that we can move the whole debate forward, which is becoming more and more important in this day and age. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was a great interview. Once again, thank you for answering our questions.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the good work that you're doing.
Thank you. I hope you enjoyed that interview segment. Now we will move on to our roaming reporter, Emma, who caught up with the Survivors Forum yesterday and see what was up there and what the people have to say. Up to you, Emma.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this fifth and final day of the meeting of states parties to the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. Now, of course, one of the central characteristics of this treaty is that it centers humanity, it centers life, and in particular, it centers those who have been most directly affected by nuclear weapons, either in war or through testing. So on this fifth and final day of the Nuclear Ban Treaty meeting, I want to give you a window into an event that did exactly this that was held yesterday. At this year's Nuclear Survivors Forum, which was the fourth of its kind to be held, 2 hibakusha, or survivors of atomic bombings, shared their personal accounts of the humanitarian impacts of nuclear weapons. This is Mr. Jiro Hamasumi, a first-generation survivor who was in utero at the time of the bombing of Hiroshima and was therefore exposed prenatally. And this is Miss Jung-soon Park, also a first-generation survivor, and she is a Korean hibakusha of the Hiroshima bombing. There were many other representatives of communities affected by nuclear weapons who were in attendance, and the room broke out into groups to discuss how we can move forward on this work together, both as affected communities and as allies. And now we're going to hear from someone who was at the forum yesterday.
Hello, my name is Hinamuira Morgan Cross. I'm a 36 years old mom from French Polynesia, so Tahiti. I grew up on the island in the middle of the Pacific. And yesterday we had an amazing time during the Nuclear Survivor Forum. It was really a moment to share with other affected communities. And we had some work to do, and we have to choose a group. And I was always with the hibakusha from Korea and hibakusha from Japan. It was, I really want to share with them because we have so much to learn from what they went through with Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They just moved me how they were saying that, of course, they want the abolition, but not like with a message very powerful because they have been through a real nuclear bomb on their city, and they're still dealing with this trauma. And I'm very grateful to have been able to share with them, and also they really helped me to shape my advocacy today. I'm still very moved by my travel to Hiroshima. It was incredible. It was traumatic, but also I'm so inspired by Hiroshima and the Memorial Center. After that, I was so inspired because you're angry. You're like asking, like, how can you do that to human? And seeing how they turn these horrible days into a message of peace is so powerful. Their resiliency is so powerful. So I'm very thankful for the hibakusha from Japan and Korean for sharing that message of peace. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emma, for your roaming report. We always enjoy that. So now I have 2 great guests with me. ICAN Zone Susie Snyder and Florian Edlekamp. So thank you guys for coming and for agreeing to do the interview. I don't think you had a choice, but I'm just kidding. So the states are in final negotiations right now. What do you guys hope to get out of this?
So now is the time when the final declaration is being negotiated. All the 74 states parties will hopefully agree on a declaration that highlights the risks of nuclear weapons, that highlights also the risk of nuclear deterrence, that calls out the reckless behavior by nuclear weapon states, that also, of course, affirms that all these states are extremely committed to the treaty, that they will continue to work on implementing it and universalizing it. And so that should really be a document that will guide the discussions in the nuclear weapons space over the next year until the review conference. And it's probably one of the strongest political languages that we will ever see on nuclear weapons in these times. Of course, it will not have a direct impact on the nuclear weapon states, as in they are not part of this treaty. But that's what all this treaty is about: changing the norms, changing the language on nuclear weapons, and therefore this political declaration cannot be underestimated.
Florian, I'm going to respectfully disagree with you. The document, the work that comes out of this treaty and the work that's gone on here, this represents a global, like almost a global majority of states. This is what people want: to condemn nuclear deterrence. They want to call out and describe as illegitimate any threat of the use of nuclear weapons, whether it be explicit or implicit. That is unacceptable. And right now there are rising tensions. So I think this meeting is actually going to send a very strong message to those who are calling for more nuclear weapons. And despite the fact that they may not be in the room, those states who are pro-nuclear weapons are watching very closely to see what happens here, because they know they are in the minority and the world is coming for their weapons.
Very well said. So for my second question, what takeaway do we get from this week, and what has come out of these meetings that you hope that we can build on as campaigners?
Personally, I'm extremely impressed by how much this movement is growing. And always at these coming together at these conferences, we can see how many new people, how many young people, how many new organizations are part of the movement, how also so many organizations really engage substantively with the treaty. They host side events, they contribute with statements in the floor, really did their homework and preparation to research what's been happening in the intersessional period, how to address the states parties, what bits are maybe missing that could come up in a side event. It's an incredibly skilled and diverse movement. And I think for us as a campaign, that's maybe the most important thing to take home from here, that, sometimes it feels a bit dire to work on nuclear disarmament at the moment, but with all the people that are here, it's also such an incredible good energy that will guide us through the next couple of years. So I'm really joyful how this entire community came together here, including the states but especially the civil society.
Yeah, this time I completely agree with you.
Thank you.
And there have been more than 1,000 civil society representatives here this week, and that number is phenomenal. And every state that has walked into this room, into the trusteeship council, has turned and gone, because the world is watching. And they feel it, and they know it, and it gives them strength to speak up, to be bold, because these are countries that are constantly getting a hard time for standing up against nuclear weapons. And when we are here prepared, and when we talk about this issue at home afterwards, we give and continue to give the courage and the continuity to keep this process going. A lot of people have said it'll be a long time before we get rid of nuclear weapons, but it's been 80 years. So we've already put in the time, we've put in the work, and now we're just on that last stretch. And so I'm really excited that what has mobilized and manifested here this week is something that we will carry throughout to the review conference and until every final warhead is dismantled. I'm confident we can do that.
Thank you.
Can I add something?
Of course.
Maybe just to mention, of course, this is at the end of the day, this is a government meeting with almost 100 states or so participating. And now for the first time, the TPNW states have adopted a very powerful report with language against nuclear deterrence and the fallacy of that theory. And, I come from a part of the world where more leaders and more governments are now talking about nuclear rearmament or nuclear armament. And so it's extremely important that there's a counterpoint to this, backed by the majority of the world's countries, that make the principal point that weapons of mass destruction are not part of a sustainable future, which, you know, should be uncontroversial. But in times like this, I think it's especially important to highlight this and adopt it in the broadest consensus possible. And so I'm really grateful for the work done on this, and I'm really hopeful that through this work, the TPNW has a real significant impact over the next couple of years in shaping this global discussion on nuclear weapons.
Building on that, if anybody wants to know how to use language, what language that governments think works to challenge the concept of nuclear deterrence, this Security Concerns Working Group the report is very long, but it gives you so many ways to talk about this problem, and it's very clear. It says the problem with our security, the problem for our security is nuclear deterrence, and we haven't seen that before from countries, so I think it's great.
Okay. Thank you guys so much. Now I'm going to move on to a question from the audience. So this one comes from Magnus from Norway. He asked, what should we as campaigners be doing between now and the review conference to prepare so we can make the strongest possible difference?
Yeah, I mean, I think many campaigners are actually doing the right things already. Get organized, build your movement in national countries, maybe team up with other like-minded organizations in your countries. The movement is so much bigger than many people think, and it's time that, you know, governments and politicians feel that the size of this movement. So now is really the time to get more members, to enlarge the movement, become an ICAN partner organization if you haven't done so already, and let's speak with a united voice against this. And then we will push politicians. We will introduce resolutions in parliaments that get the governments to attend the review conference. That could be one of the most important conferences that nuclear weapons have ever addressed nuclear weapons. So I think all our efforts should be to bring every single country into the room at this conference.
And I think one of the ways that we're going to do that is to make nuclear weapons an everyday conversation. And one of the great things that we've seen is you don't have to be an expert to talk about nuclear weapons, because there's expertise in the world already. And you can bring that expertise, you can review things, you can point people to academic journals if that's what they're into. Or you can point people to, common sense, because the common sense thing is that nuclear weapons are dumb. Like, they are big, dumb, clumsy bombs that are designed to blow up cities. That is why they were made. And once you start asking the simplest questions on nuclear weapons, you really help people see how dumb they are. And that is really key. And I think we need to have that conversation with people who might not normally have it. And it's an everyday conversation. So, you get up in the morning and you think about, oh, what do I need to do today? And, you're making your breakfast and you're talking to whoever's, around your household and handing you a cup of coffee, if you're lucky, and say, hey, baby, what do you think about nuclear weapons? Let's talk about this. Make it an everyday conversation. You go, you're out at the bar with your friends and you're doing a pub quiz, because why not? Some people are very good at it. Not me. And you've got to raise the question, hey, this is really interesting, but did you guys know how dumb nuclear weapons are? And you can bring it in and you can bring it up. And it's fine to do that. People need the courage to do it and to say it. And everybody can, because it's a simple issue with a clear solution. And that is so different from so many of the other complex challenges in the world. Nuclear weapons are dumb. They're not useful for the military. They're designed to destroy cities. And honest to gosh, they are meant for nuclear weapons, they're meant to be used in a battle in Europe. That's not okay. So we have a right and a responsibility to say, hey, I don't like this thing. Let's do something about it. And everybody can do that. And we really encourage people to do so. Just talk about it. Get the conversation started. And if you need help in finding the words, well, ICAN has a ton of resources out there. as do our more than 700 partner organizations around the world. There's plenty of info, plenty of people who are on side with you. Time to talk about it and make the change.
Thank you so much for your wonderful response. So I guess this closes this interview block, and it also closes MSP TV for this MSP edition at least. So thank you all for watching us. And if you want to rewatch, then do not hesitate to go to ICAN.org, MSP_TV. And also, if you want to see some of the statements, then go to UN Web TV. And also, since Susie brought it up, I guess I have to say it. Don't forget to congratulate the winners of the pub quiz in the comments, which is Florian and I. And shout out to the rest of our team. Shout out to Daniel, Melissa, Magritte, Jean-Marie. Thank you guys for the victory. And have a nice weekend, everyone.